The phone screen lit up with an unfamiliar number. I watched it vibrate twice against the kitchen counter before picking up. "Mrs. Harrison," a voice began, uncertain and apologetic in that practiced way service workers learn early. "This is Michael calling from the Riverside restaurant. I'm terribly sorry to disturb you during what I'm sure is a busy morning." He paused, and in that silence I could hear the weight of what came next. "There seems to be a complication with the payment method connected to your family's reservation. The credit card we have on file was rejected when we attempted to process it a few moments ago. Your family mentioned you were on your way with an alternative form of payment." "I'm not on my way," I said. My voice came out steady, almost flat. The pause that followed stretched longer than comfortable. Behind him I caught fragments of the dining room, silverware meeting plates, someone's chair scraping across hardwood, the murmur of Sunday conversation. "I apologize," he said, choosing each word with visible care, "but they're quite insistent this must be some kind of mistake. We've run the card 4 separate times now. It's not a mistake. That card doesn't have authorization anymore." Another silence, deeper this time, like he was recalculating something fundamental. "So then, who should we speak with regarding the outstanding balance?" "My daughter." I heard him exhale, slow and quiet, as if his suspicion had just confirmed itself. "I understand. Thank you for clarifying that for us." The call disconnected. Immediately my phone brightened again. A text preview slid down from the top edge. "Handle this immediately." I didn't tap it open. Another buzz followed, then another. Incoming calls without ringtone, stacking silently. I placed the phone face down against the wood grain and poured coffee into a mug I had no intention of finishing. 11 minutes later, the restaurant's number appeared again. "Mrs. Harrison," Michael said, and this time the politeness had worn thin at the edges. "They're requesting we attempt the transaction one more time. They've gone ahead and ordered another bottle of champagne and the specialty dessert course, under the assumption this will be sorted out." "It won't be sorted out." A sharp intake of breath, barely audible. Someone was speaking loudly behind him now, a laugh that cut off abruptly mid-sound, brittle and performative. "Understood," he said quietly. "We'll proceed from here." When that call ended, my phone pulsed again. This time it was a photo notification. I looked at it despite myself. White tablecloths, champagne flutes catching afternoon light, smiles angled precisely for the camera. The caption beneath read, "Celebrating Mother's Day with the ones who matter." I didn't react, didn't respond. I sat there until the screen dimmed to black, and then I sat there longer. It had started that same morning with a message from my daughter. The text arrived at 8:19. "Mother's Day is reserved for the good ones. You can sit this one out." No greeting, no preamble. The punctuation was careful, deliberate, rehearsed. I read it twice, not because the meaning eluded me, but because I wanted to confirm I hadn't misunderstood the casualness of it, the way it arrived like a verdict already discussed among others, already decided. I started to type her name in the reply field and stopped. This wasn't anger, this wasn't even conflict, this was administration. My daughter had absorbed that tone from decades of watching me smooth things over quietly, write checks without discussion, arrive early and leave late, adjust myself before anyone else had to feel uncomfortable. The phrase lingered there. The good ones, not good daughters, not good mothers, just good ones. Vague enough to be defensible, sharp enough to exclude. I could already imagine how she'd explain it later if pressed, that it wasn't meant personally, that she hadn't intended it that way, that people were so sensitive these days. She'd used that voice on me before. My phone vibrated again. "We just want this to be uncomplicated." Uncomplicated meant clean edges. Uncomplicated meant fewer difficulties. Uncomplicated meant I stayed outside the frame without protest. I set the phone down and folded my hands together until my knuckles went rigid. I thought about the first time she'd decided where I belonged without consulting me. The holiday she'd hosted and claimed there wasn't adequate seating. The dinner reservation made for 7 when there were 8 of us. The gradual way my presence had become optional while my financial contributions remained expected. The message wasn't asking for understanding. It was announcing a boundary she assumed I wouldn't test. I didn't respond. Minutes accumulated. Then a new line appeared. "You understand, don't you?" I did understand, perfectly. This wasn't about celebration, it was about curation, about control, about determining who enhanced the aesthetic and who complicated it. I closed the message without responding and opened my banking application instead. The silence wasn't hesitation, it was strategy. By the time I finally typed a reply, my hands had stopped trembling. I opened the message again and read it the way you read something you already know will alter the day's trajectory. Mother's Day is reserved for the good ones. You can sit this one out. My thumbs hovered above the keyboard. Years earlier, this was the moment I would have softened things, asked what she meant, offered to help somehow, promised to stay out of everyone's way. Instead, I typed a single word. Understood. I added the rest without pausing. I'll be canceling my card from the reservation. I read it once. No anger, no explanation, nothing she could reshape into an argument. I pressed send before my mind could reach for an apology that no longer belonged there. The response didn't come. I opened my banking app and navigated to the account I'd labeled years before, family occasions. It had started as a convenience, a single place for reservations, deposits, last-minute charges when someone forgot their wallet, or simply needed assistance. The card attached to the Mother's Day reservation sat there, still active, still trusted. My finger hesitated above the screen, not from shaking but from control, from the weight of what came next. Cancel authorization. A confirmation window materialized. Are you certain? I pressed confirm. The screen refreshed, status updated. The card was no longer active. I closed the app and set the phone down. It buzzed almost instantly. Why would you even say something like that? I didn't answer. Another message appeared. We've already made all the arrangements. The words didn't affect me the way they once would have. Arrangements had always meant expectations placed carefully on my shoulders. Quiet assumptions that I would carry whatever remained unspoken. The phone rang. I let it ring until silence returned. A new text followed, sharper this time. Don't do this today. Today mattered because there was an audience, because she had already determined how the narrative would look, and my role in it was supposed to be predictable. I picked up the phone, typed one final line, then erased it. The boundary had already been established. Anything more would have sounded like permission to renegotiate. I locked the screen and turned it face down. The tremor in my hand passed. What remained was the weight of knowing exactly what would unfold next and allowing it. The first photograph appeared before 10 o'clock. A wide shot of the table, white linens, glasses lifted just enough to catch the light. My daughter's smile centered, effortless, practiced. The caption followed seconds later. Mother's Day brunch with the ones who matter. I watched the image load, then vanish as more followed. Close-ups, plates angled for visual effect. A champagne bottle tipped mid-pour. Faces leaning together, confident in their symmetry. My phone buzzed. See, everything's fine. I didn't reply. Another notification slid down. This one from the bank. A quiet line of text. Authorization pending. Then just as quietly, authorization declined. No sound, no alert. Nothing dramatic enough to interrupt the moment unfolding at that table. They wouldn't notice yet. A new photo appeared. My daughter this time, chin lifted, glass raised higher than the others. To family. Someone in the background laughed. I could hear it even without sound. The kind of laugh that assumes continuity, that assumes someone else will always smooth the rough edges. My phone vibrated again. You're being melodramatic. I set it down without opening the message. The next photo arrived regardless. Dessert menus fanned across the table, fingers pointing, a server leaning in with pen poised. Behind the scenes, the second authorization attempt failed. Still no reaction, still no awareness. Another message pushed through. They're bringing out the champagne course next. Don't make this uncomfortable. Uncomfortable had always been the word deployed when I stopped absorbing discomfort for everyone else, when I didn't rescue a moment quickly enough, when I let silence settle where my wallet usually intervened. I took a sip of coffee that had gone cold. The photographs kept arriving. Smiles held slightly longer now. Angles adjusted. Laughter caught a fraction of a second late. Confidence stretched thin enough to notice if you knew where to look. The third authorization failed while they were choosing between desserts. No one tagged me. No one checked in. They didn't need to. The safety net had always caught them before. I watched the screen dim, then illuminate again, steady and patient, as if waiting for me to flinch. I didn't. The first phone call came while they were still smiling. I recognized my daughter's number and let it ring until the screen went dark. It lit again seconds later. Then again, each vibration closer together, like she was tapping her foot somewhere crowded and bright. A third call followed, then a fourth. I didn't move. A text replaced the ringing. Fix this, no greeting, no explanation. Just the assumption that whatever had broken would be handled the way it always had. Another message arrived before I finished reading the first. They're saying the card was declined. I imagined the table then. A server pausing with the check folder still open. A polite smile held a beat too long. Someone shifting in their chair, lowering their voice. The phone rang again, longer this time. Insistent. I turned the volume off and set it face down. Minutes passed, then the tone changed. "What are you doing?" That one landed heavier, less command, more confusion. The certainty was thinning now, replaced by something sharp and fragile. I could almost hear her leaning away from the table, angling the phone, trying not to be obvious. I knew that gesture. I'd taught her how to disappear from discomfort by pretending to step outside it. Another vibration. They told us to try it again. I didn't answer. The next message came slower. The words spaced wider apart. "Mom, please." The word had weight now, not affection, leverage. Behind that table the whispering would have started. The manager would have been summoned. Posture careful. Voice low. Someone would suggest a different card. Someone else would laugh too loudly, trying to keep the moment light. I picked up the phone, looked at the screen, then placed it back exactly where it had been. The call stopped. For a brief interval there was nothing. No buzzing, no demands. Then my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I answered that one. "Mrs. Harrison, this is Michael again." His voice was different this time, firmer, less hopeful. "They're requesting we attempt the card one more time. They're insisting you've approved the additional charges." "I haven't." A pause, paper shifting. He'd stepped away from the table. I could tell by the way the background noise dropped. "For clarity," he said carefully, "are they still authorized users on your account?" "No, they're not." The words settled between us, clean and final. "So the outstanding balance," he continued, slower now, "would be their responsibility." "Yes." Another pause. This one longer. When he spoke again, the apology was gone. "Thank you for confirming. We'll proceed accordingly." A muffled voice broke through the background, sharper than before. Someone demanding, someone accustomed to being accommodated. Michael lowered his voice. "They're asking for you by name. They don't need me. I understand." The line went quiet, then ended. My phone lit up immediately. "What did you tell them?" I didn't answer. Another message followed, all capital letters. "This is humiliating." I imagined the shift at the table, the manager standing straighter, the server no longer smiling. The check folder placed down with intention instead of ceremony. The phone rang again. This time I let it go to voicemail. A new text appeared, rushed and misspelled. "They say we have to cover it now." I set the phone down. The power had shifted, and she felt it. Not because I'd raised my voice, not because I'd explained myself. Because someone outside the family had been told the truth, and it changed the rules instantly. Another vibration. "You can't just do this." I picked up the phone long enough to type 3 words, then erase them. There was nothing left to clarify. Authorization had been revoked, responsibility reassigned. The transaction closed. The phone rang again, but I didn't look at it. For the first time, the problem belonged to the people sitting at that table. I arrived after the plates had been cleared, but before the check had been settled. That narrow window where everyone knows the celebration has ended, but no one wants to be the first to acknowledge it. My daughter spotted me the instant I stepped into the dining room. Her chair scraped back too quickly. Relief flickered across her face before hardening into accusation. "There you are," she said, loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "You let this escalate too far." I didn't take the seat she pulled out. I remained standing. That alone shifted something in the room. "This ends now," she continued, lowering her voice to something meant to sound reasonable. "Just take care of it." The manager hovered several steps away, posture professional, eyes alert. I met his gaze instead of hers. "I'll cover the basic meal," I said, what was already served. Not the champagne, not the additional dessert courses. My daughter laughed once, sharp and incredulous. "That's not how this works. It is today." She leaned in, voice tightening. "You're embarrassing us." I let the silence stretch until laughter from another table filled the space. When I spoke again, my voice didn't rise to meet hers. "You decided who belonged at this table. You don't get to keep the privileges after you discard the people." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked around, searching for support that didn't materialize. My sister stared down at her napkin. Someone coughed. The manager stepped closer. "I'll process the charge accordingly," he said, already holding the tablet. My daughter reached for my wrist. I stepped back before her fingers could land. "Don't touch me." The words were quiet. They landed harder than shouting would have. She swallowed. You always do this. You make everything difficult. I make things honest. The manager turned the screen toward me. I confirmed the amount with a nod and signed without ceremony. No flourish, no apology. When I turned to leave, my daughter followed me into the aisle between tables, her voice thinner now. You didn't have to do it like this. I didn't have to do anything. I walked out without looking back. The first call came less than an hour after I left the restaurant. Catherine, this is your sister. What did you do? Her voice was tight, already braced for confrontation. I paid what I agreed to pay, that's not what I'm asking about. A pause, then softer. They were humiliated. I wasn't present for the humiliation. She exhaled sharply. You know what I mean. This didn't need to happen, it already did. The line went quiet long enough for me to hear someone else whispering near her phone. Advice being fed, strategy being formed. Mom's asking for a call, she said. She's very upset. She had an opportunity to speak this morning, that's different. It isn't. I ended the call, the phone rang again immediately, a cousin this time, then an aunt. Each voice followed the same pattern. Concern first, confusion second, accusation by the end. We just want to understand. This isn't like you, you're destroying the family. I listened until the words began to repeat themselves, then stopped answering. The messages kept arriving regardless. Can we talk this through? You're taking it too far. We should all sit down and clear the air. Clear the air. As if the problem had been a misunderstanding instead of a boundary crossed deliberately and publicly. A new number illuminated the screen. I recognized it before answering. This is Pastor Williams, the voice said gently. Your daughter reached out. She's requesting mediation. She didn't ask me. He hesitated. She assumed you would agree. I don't. Another pause. He was careful now. Would you be open to a conversation about forgiveness? I'm open to accountability. The silence that followed told me everything. Forgiveness had been the goal. Access the reason. I won't be attending, I said. Please make a note of that. I will. I hung up and turned the phone off entirely. When I powered it back on later, the notifications stacked neatly at the top of the screen. Missed calls, voice messages, attempts. I opened my contacts and began blocking numbers one by one. No anger, no rush, just completion. When I finished, the phone felt lighter in my hand. So did I. The conference call began exactly on time. Catherine, my attorney said, voice steady, practiced. We're ready when you are. I didn't need encouragement. Let's proceed. My financial advisor joined a second later, papers rustling on the other end. Not theatrics, not judgment, just process. We'll start with informal access, the advisor said. Authorized users, recurring payments, discretionary allowances, remove all of them. A brief pause, not resistance. Confirmation. That includes your daughter, your sister, and the family account tied to shared occasions. All of them. Keys clicked, screens refreshed. Once this is finalized, my attorney added, there will be no implied obligation, no expectation of coverage, no assumption of consent. That's the point. Another pause, this one gentler. Are you comfortable proceeding without notice? I gave notice years ago. It was ignored. No one argued with that. The documents arrived in my inbox while we stayed on the line. Clear language, clean edges, names listed without emotion attached to them. Please review Section 4, my attorney said. This formally dissolves any informal financial reliance. I scrolled, read, signed. The confirmation appeared almost immediately. Processing completed. My advisor spoke again. You understand they may push back. They already have. And this closes that door. Yes, silence settled, not heavy, not triumphant, just final. We'll file the final notice today, my attorney said. You're legally insulated, no one can compel access moving forward. Thank you. When the call ended, I stayed seated longer than necessary, waiting for something. A rush, a wave of regret. It didn't come. What I felt instead was relief. Not the sharp kind. The quiet kind that settles into your shoulders when you stop carrying weight you never agreed to hold forever. My phone buzzed once. A new number. I didn't answer. I opened the confirmation again and read it slowly, not to savor it but to understand it. This wasn't revenge. It was structure. Boundaries made enforceable. The cycle didn't end with a speech or an apology. It ended with signatures. Mother's Day arrived without announcements. My phone stayed quiet longer than it had in years. No reminders, no early messages pretending warmth. The silence felt intentional, like a door closing itself instead of being slammed. I poured coffee and let it cool while the day moved forward without asking anything from me. A message finally came through just after noon. My daughter's name appeared on the screen. I opened it. "We need to talk." No apology, no acknowledgement, just a reach. Careful and late. I typed, erased, then typed again. "I'm not available today." The reply came quickly this time. "This isn't over." I didn't answer. Another number rang a few minutes later. I recognized my sister's cadence even before she spoke. "She's really struggling," she said. "You could at least reassure her." I reassured her for decades. "That's not fair, it's accurate." Silence pressed in from her end of the line. When she spoke again, the edge was gone. "You've changed." I stopped disappearing. The call ended without ceremony. I walked later, not to be seen, not to be noticed. Just moving through streets I'd lived alongside for years without ever claiming as mine. The city held its shape, brick and iron and long memory. It didn't ask me to prove I belonged. A notification chimed once more near dusk. A voicemail this time. I didn't play it. I didn't need to hear the tone to know the content. The old pattern reaching for its final thread. I deleted it without opening. When evening settled, I sat with the quiet and felt the absence where obligation used to live. It wasn't empty. It was clear. No one apologized. Nothing was repaired, and nothing needed to be. I set the phone down and left it there. This was Mother's Day as it finally was. Unnegotiated, unpaid, mine. 3 days passed before the next contact arrived. Not a phone call this time, a letter. Handwritten, my daughter's careful script on expensive stationery. I recognized the paper before I opened it, the kind she used for thank you notes and formal invitations. I held it for a moment before unfolding it. The weight of it. The deliberateness. "Mom," it began, not Catherine, not Mrs. Harrison. "Mom," deployed like a tool. "I've had time to think about what happened. I understand you were upset, but I think we both let emotions get the better of us. What happened at the restaurant was unfortunate, but it doesn't have to define us going forward." I stopped reading. Let emotions get the better of us, both. As if we'd equally participated in what unfolded. As if my boundary had been emotional rather than structural. "I've spoken with Pastor Williams," the letter continued. "He's agreed to facilitate a family meeting. I think if we all sit down together, we can work through this misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. The word appeared 3 more times in the next paragraph. Each use careful, strategic, reframing the narrative before anyone else could define it. "I know you love me," she wrote near the end. "I know you wouldn't want to hurt the family like this. Let's find a way back to each other." The signature was elaborate, practiced. "Your daughter, always." I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Then I placed the envelope in the recycling bin beneath my desk. Not crumpled, not torn, just discarded with the same consideration it had been written with. None. The next attempt came through my sister. She showed up unannounced on a Thursday afternoon, holding a bakery box and wearing an expression I'd seen before. The one that said she'd been elected spokesperson and wasn't happy about it. I almost didn't answer the door, but curiosity, or maybe something older than that, made me open it. "I brought your favorite," she said, lifting the box slightly. "Lemon bars. Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She entered carefully, as if the space might be different than she remembered. As if I might be. We sat in the living room, the bakery box between us on the coffee table. Neither of us opened it. "She's miserable," my sister said without preamble. "She won't say it, but she is. That's not my responsibility. Catherine, she's your daughter. I'm aware." My sister folded her hands in her lap, then unfolded them. "This isn't about the restaurant, not really. This is about something deeper, and I think you know that. I do know that. That's why nothing's changed." She leaned forward slightly. "What do you want from her? An apology? An admission? What would it take for you to forgive this?" "Acknowledgement," I said. "Real acknowledgement, not reframing. Not rewriting history to make herself more comfortable. And if she gives you that, I'll believe it when I see it." My sister sat back. "You sound so hard now. So cold." "I sound clear. This isn't you. You mean this isn't convenient for you?" The silence that followed felt different than the others, sharper, more honest. "Fine," she said finally. "I tried. But you should know, you're not just losing her, you're losing all of us. We can't keep being caught in the middle of this." "You were never in the middle," I said quietly. "You chose a side the moment you called her suffering more important than my boundaries." She stood then, leaving the bakery box behind. At the door she turned back. I hope whatever point you're making is worth it. It's not a point, I said, it's my life. She left without another word. The lemon bars sat on my coffee table for 2 days before I threw them away, box and all. The family group chat, which I hadn't muted but hadn't contributed to in months, suddenly came alive. I watched the messages accumulate, plans being made, holidays being discussed, my name conspicuously absent from every list, every invitation, every casual mention of future gatherings. It was a soft erasure. Nothing dramatic. Nothing I could point to and call cruel. Just the slow, methodical process of being edited out. I left the group chat. No announcement, no explanation. Just left. 2 people noticed. My cousin sent a private message. Did you mean to leave the family chat? Yes, I replied. She didn't respond. The second notice came from my youngest niece, barely 20, who'd always been kind in that thoughtless way young people sometimes are. Are you okay? She wrote. Everyone's worried. I'm fine, I told her. But thank you for asking. She sent back a heart emoji, small but genuine. I saved that message. The months that followed were quieter than any I could remember. No last-minute requests for loans that would never be repaid. No assumptions about my availability for babysitting, event planning, or emotional labor. No calls that started with "I hate to ask but" and ended with me saying yes to things I didn't want to do. The quiet felt strange at first, like a sound you'd grown so accustomed to that its absence became louder than its presence ever was. But slowly, the strangeness faded, and what remained was space. Space to think, space to choose, space to exist without constantly calibrating myself against other people's needs and expectations. I started small. Dinner out when I wanted it, alone, without apologizing for the single table. A weekend trip to a town I'd always meant to visit. Books read without interruption. Mornings that belonged entirely to me. None of it was dramatic. None of it was revenge. It was simply, finally, mine. I ran into her 6 months later, unplanned, in a grocery store. The kind of encounter you can't prepare for because you don't see it coming. I was reaching for coffee when I heard her voice in the next aisle. That particular cadence I would have recognized anywhere. For a moment I considered leaving my cart and walking out. But something, maybe stubbornness, maybe just tiredness of running, kept me there. She appeared at the end of the aisle, pushing her own cart. Our eyes met. Time didn't stop, but something in it shifted, slowed. She looked different. Thinner maybe, or just worn in a way I hadn't seen before. "Mom," she said. Just that, just the word. I nodded, didn't smile, didn't frown, just acknowledged her. "How are you?" she asked, and it sounded like a genuine question rather than a pleasantry. That alone surprised me. "I'm well, and you?" She hesitated, managing. We stood there, carts between us like a buffer. Other shoppers moved around us, annoyed at the obstruction but not enough to say anything. "I've wanted to call," she said, "multiple times. But you haven't." "No." She looked down at her cart, at the carefully arranged items. "I didn't know what to say. That's honest." She looked up at me then, and I saw something in her face I hadn't expected. Not shame exactly, but something adjacent to it. Awareness maybe. "I understand now," she said quietly. "What I did, how I..." She trailed off, searching for words that didn't come easily. How I took advantage, how I assumed. I waited, didn't help her, didn't finish her sentences. "I'm not asking for anything," she continued. "I just wanted you to know that I understand. Finally." "What changed?" I asked. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "My daughter. She's 13 now, and she paused. She started treating me the way I treated you." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "And it hurts," she said. "It hurts in a way I didn't know it could, and I realized, you lived with that for years, from me." "Yes, I'm sorry." The words sat between us, small and insufficient, but real. I could feel their weight, their truth. "I appreciate that," I said. "I do." She nodded. Started to turn her cart away, then stopped. "Would you," she began, then paused. "Would you ever consider coffee, sometime, just to talk?" "Maybe," I said. "Someday." "But not yet." She nodded again. "I understand." She left then, pushing her cart toward the checkout. I stood there for another moment, holding a bag of coffee I no longer wanted, feeling something I couldn't quite name. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But perhaps the beginning of something that might, eventually, grow into it. I didn't call her. Not that week, not the next. but I thought about the encounter more than I expected to. The way she'd looked, the way she'd sounded, the acknowledgement that had come, late but genuine. A month later, a card arrived, not expensive stationery this time. Just a simple card with a simple message. I'm working on being better, no expectations, just wanted you to know. I put it on my refrigerator. Not prominently, just there. A small acknowledgement of her small step. 2 months after that, I sent a text, "How are you?" The reply came quickly, "Surprised to hear from you, I'm okay. Working on things." We exchanged messages occasionally after that. Nothing deep, nothing dramatic, just small connections, weather, books, a funny thing that happened. It felt careful, tentative, like we were learning a new language together. My sister called one evening, months into this new pattern. "I heard you're talking to her again," she said. No preamble. "Sometimes." "Are you getting back to normal?" "This is normal," I said. "This is what normal looks like now." She didn't understand. I didn't expect her to. The first time I agreed to coffee, it was on a Tuesday afternoon in a cafe neither of us had history with. Neutral ground. My daughter arrived first. I saw her through the window, sitting at a corner table, hands wrapped around a mug she probably hadn't drunk from yet. When I entered, she stood halfway up, then sat back down, uncertain of the protocol. I took the chair across from her. "Thank you for coming," she said. "We'll see how it goes." She almost smiled at that. Almost. We talked carefully at first, surface things, her work, my recent trip, the weather which had turned unexpectedly cold. But gradually as the coffee cooled and the afternoon stretched, we went deeper. "I need you to understand," she said at one point. "I didn't see it. For so long I genuinely didn't see what I was doing, and now you do, now I do, and I can't unsee it." I nodded. "That's the thing about awareness, once it arrives you can't send it back. I don't know how to fix it," she said, and her voice cracked slightly. "I don't know how to fix what I broke." "You can't," I said, and watched her face fall. "You can't fix it, but you can build something new, something different. If we both want to." "Do you want to?" I considered the question honestly, sat with it. "I don't know yet," I finally said, "but I'm willing to try. That's more than I deserve." "Maybe. But it's what I'm offering." We finished our coffee, made vague plans to do it again, nothing concrete, nothing binding, just the possibility of another conversation. As we stood to leave, she hesitated. "Can I?" she started, then stopped. "Can I hug you?" I thought about it, not long but long enough for her to see me thinking. "Not yet," I said. She nodded. "Okay, that's okay." We walked out separately, her first, then me, both of us alone but moving in the same direction. The second coffee happened 3 weeks later. The third, 2 weeks after that. A pattern emerged, slow and careful. We learned each other again, or maybe for the first time. Without the weight of assumption, without the framework of obligation. She told me about her struggles with her daughter. The way she was trying to be different, trying to see and hear rather than assume and expect. It wasn't going well, she admitted. But she was trying. I told her about my life now, the space I'd claimed, the peace I'd found in my own company. The friends I'd made who didn't know the old version of me, who only knew who I was now. Sometimes our conversations were easy, sometimes they were hard. Sometimes we sat in silence that felt comfortable rather than tense. One afternoon, several months into our new pattern, she said something that surprised me. "I'm grateful," she said. "For what?" "That you didn't let me keep hurting you, that you stopped it." I looked at her. Most people wouldn't see it that way, I know. But I do, because if you hadn't, I'd still be the person I was. And I hated who I was, even if I didn't know it then. We sat with that for a moment. "I'm not the same either," I said. "I can't go back to who I was before." "I don't want you to," she said. "That person got hurt. This person," she gestured at me, "this person knows her worth." I felt something shift then. Not forgiveness, not quite. But recognition, mutual and real. The holidays approached, and with them the question I knew was coming. She asked carefully. "What are your plans for Thanksgiving?" "I'm having dinner with friends," I said. "People I met this year." "Oh." She tried to hide her disappointment and failed. "What are yours?" "The usual, family." She paused. "Would you consider coming? Not to the big dinner, but maybe after, just for dessert?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I'll think about it," I said. "That's all I'm asking." I did think about it. For days. Weighed what I'd gained against what I might risk. Weighed the progress made against the old patterns waiting to reassert themselves. In the end, I sent a text the day before Thanksgiving. "I'll come for an hour, just us." Not the whole family. Her reply was immediate. Yes, thank you. I showed up at 7:30, after the big meal, after most people had left. She answered the door herself, her daughter visible behind her, curious and uncertain. This is your grandmother, my daughter said to her. Grandma Catherine. Hi, the girl said, awkward in the way teenagers are. Hi, I replied. We sat in the living room, not the dining room where the earlier celebration had happened. A smaller space, more intimate. My daughter brought pie. Her daughter sat between us, a bridge neither of us had planned but both of us needed. We talked about school, about music, about the things 13-year-olds care about. And slowly, the girl relaxed. Started asking me questions. About my life, my work, what I like to do. You seem cool, she said at one point, surprised. I laughed. Thank you. Mom said you guys didn't talk for a while. We didn't. Why? The question hung there. My daughter and I looked at each other. Because I made mistakes, my daughter said. Big ones. And your grandmother had to protect herself. Did you apologize? I did. And she forgave you? My daughter looked at me. I looked at her. We're working on it, I said. The girl nodded, processing. That's fair. We stayed for 2 hours, longer than planned. When I left, my daughter walked me to the door. Thank you, she said. For coming, for trying. Thank you for asking, I replied, for respecting my boundaries. She nodded. Can we do this again? Maybe Christmas? Maybe, that's enough. I drove home through quiet streets, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not completion, not resolution. But possibility, the sense that something new was being built from the rubble of something old. It wasn't the relationship I'd had before. That was gone, irretrievable. But this, whatever this was becoming, felt more honest, more sustainable, more real. I didn't know where it would lead, didn't know if we'd ever get back to something that looked like closeness. But I knew this. I wasn't disappearing anymore. I wasn't shrinking to fit someone else's comfort, and whatever relationship we built from here would have to accommodate that truth, or it wouldn't exist at all. Christmas came. I went for a few hours. New Year's passed. I declined that invitation, needed the space. My daughter didn't push, didn't guilt, just said okay and meant it. The pattern continued. Some invitations accepted, some declined. Some conversations easy, some difficult, but all of them honest. All of them real. One spring afternoon, nearly a year after that first coffee, we sat in her backyard while her daughter practiced softball in the park nearby. I never thanked you, she said out of nowhere. For what? For showing me what a boundary looks like. For teaching me, even though I fought it. I didn't do it to teach you. I know. But I learned anyway. We watched birds move through the trees, listened to distant sounds of the neighborhood. Do you forgive me? She asked. Really? I looked at her. Sometimes, I said. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm still angry. Sometimes I'm sad about all the time we lost. It's not one thing, that's fair. But I'm here, I said. And that means something. It means everything, she replied. We sat in silence after that, not uncomfortable, not strained. Just two people who'd hurt each other and were learning how to exist together anyway. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't healed, but it was honest. And for now, for today, that was enough. 2 years after that Mother's Day, I stood in my kitchen on a Sunday morning, watching light move across the counter. The house was quiet, deliberately, peacefully quiet. My phone sat on the table, silent, no demands, no expectations, no messages that carried weight disguised as casual requests. I'd built something in those 2 years. Not a new family, not a replacement for what was lost. Just a life that fit me. Friendships with people who asked before assuming. Commitments I chose rather than inherited. Space that belonged to me without apology. The relationship with my daughter had continued its careful evolution. Some months we talked weekly. Some months we didn't talk at all. Neither pattern felt wrong anymore. Both felt honest. She'd stopped trying to pull me back into the old structure. Stopped hinting that maybe, if I just tried harder, things could go back to normal. She'd finally accepted that normal was gone. And what we had now was better, even if it was smaller. My phone buzzed. A message from her. Morning. Hope you're having a good Sunday. Simple. No subtext. No request hidden in pleasantry. I am, I replied. You? Good. Taking Sarah to a game later. Have fun. Thanks. Talk soon. And that was it. A complete interaction. No guilt, no manipulation, no unspoken expectations. Just two people checking in because they wanted to, not because they had to. I poured coffee and took it to the back porch. Sat in the chair I'd bought just for this spot, this time of day. The morning unfolded around me, patient and unhurried. A neighbor waved from her garden. We'd become friends over these 2 years. She knew some of my story, not all of it. Knew enough to understand why I valued my space, my boundaries, my careful choices. "Beautiful morning," she called. "It is," I agreed. "Coffee later? Maybe tomorrow," I said. "Today I'm keeping to myself." She nodded, understanding, no offense taken. No explanation needed. This was what I'd fought for, this ease. This ability to say yes when I meant yes and no when I meant no, without having to defend or explain or apologize. It had cost me. I wouldn't pretend it hadn't. The family I'd been born into had mostly faded away. Some by their choice, some by mine. Holiday cards still arrived from a few cousins. Texts from my niece, infrequent but warm. But the larger structure, the assumed gatherings, the obligatory participation, all of that was gone, and I didn't miss it. Not the way I'd thought I would. What I missed was the idea of it, the fantasy I'd held for so long that if I just tried hard enough, sacrificed enough, shrank enough, I could make it work. That fantasy had died hard, but it had died. And in its place something real had grown. My phone buzzed again, a different number this time, my sister. We hadn't spoken in over a year. She'd made her position clear after the restaurant incident, and I'd accepted it. Let her go without chasing. I looked at the message preview, thinking of you. Wondering how you are. I almost didn't open it, almost let it sit there, unanswered, but curiosity, or maybe just the morning softness, made me tap it. "I'm well," I replied after a moment. "Thank you for asking." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Can we talk? Sometime? I've been thinking a lot lately. About everything. About what happened. About my part in it." I set the phone down and looked out at the morning. A conversation with my sister could go many ways, could be genuine. Could be another attempt to pull me back into old patterns. Could be something in between. "Maybe," I replied finally. "Let me think about it." "Take your time," she responded. I set the phone aside and returned to my coffee. Thought about what 2 years had taught me, about the difference between reconciliation and capitulation, about the way real change showed itself in actions, not words. About the value of waiting to see what people did, not just what they said. If my sister wanted to talk, truly talk, I'd know soon enough. If she wanted me to pretend nothing had happened, to slide back into old roles, I'd know that too. And knowing the difference, being able to see it clearly, that was the gift those 2 years had given me. Later that afternoon, I met my friend Rachel for a walk. We'd met at a book club 18 months ago and had fallen into an easy friendship. She knew about my family situation, broad strokes, knew I'd established boundaries and lost relationships because of it. "How are you doing?" she asked as we fell into step together. "Really doing? Really good," I said, and meant it. "No regrets?" I thought about it. "Some sadness," I said. "About what couldn't be saved. But no regrets about the choices I made." "That's healthy," she said. "It's taken work," I replied. "Lots of work." We walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then she said, "You know what I admire about you? You didn't try to make yourself smaller to keep the peace. You chose yourself. Someone had to." She laughed. "True. But it's harder than it sounds." It was, I agreed. It really was. We finished our walk, made plans for next week, parted ways. As I drove home, I thought about what she'd said. Choosing myself. It sounded simple when stated like that. But the doing of it, the daily practice of it, that had been anything but simple. It meant disappointing people. Meant being misunderstood. Meant accepting that some relationships couldn't survive honesty. Meant sitting with discomfort instead of rushing to fix it. But it also meant this life I'd built, this peace I'd found, this version of myself I'd become. That evening I made dinner just for me, nothing fancy, nothing Instagram-worthy. Just food I liked, eaten at a table I'd set with care. In a house that felt like mine in a way it never had before. After dinner I sat with a book I'd been meaning to read for months. No interruptions, no phone calls that needed answering, no emergencies that required my immediate attention. Just quiet, and pages, and time that belonged entirely to me. My phone buzzed around 8. My daughter. Random question, her message read. "What was your favorite book when you were my age?" I smiled. She'd been asking questions like this lately. Small things. Getting to know me as a person rather than just a role. "To Kill a Mockingbird," I replied. "I must have read it 6 times that year." "Why?" I thought about how to answer. Because Atticus Finch showed me what integrity looked like. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Makes sense, she wrote back. That's very you. Is it? Yeah. She paused and added, I'm reading it now, for school, but also because I wanted to. Let me know what you think of it. I will. Love you, Mom. I stared at those 3 words. She'd said them before in the months since we'd started rebuilding, but each time they landed differently, carried more weight, more truth. Love you too, I typed back. I set the phone down and returned to my book, but I'd lost the thread of the story. My mind was elsewhere, thinking about progress, about the slow, difficult work of building something real from the ruins of something broken. It wasn't perfect. My relationship with my daughter would never be what it might have been if we'd started differently. Too much had happened, too much trust had been broken and slowly, carefully rebuilt. But it was real, and it was ours, and we'd both chosen it, every day, with full awareness of what it cost and what it gave. That night, before bed, I stood at my bedroom window and looked out at the neighborhood. Lights in windows. Lives being lived. Each one containing its own complexities, its own struggles, its own quiet victories. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago. The one who'd received that text on Mother's Day morning. The one who'd been so accustomed to shrinking that she barely recognized herself anymore. I thought about the moment of decision. The moment when I'd chosen to cancel that card. It had seemed small at the time. Just one action, one boundary, one word no. But from that moment everything had changed. Not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily, inevitably, like water reshaping stone. I'd learned something crucial in those 3 years. That people would only treat me the way I taught them to. That boundaries weren't cruel, they were necessary. That choosing myself wasn't selfish, it was survival. And most importantly, I'd learned that I was worth choosing. My phone lit up one more time. A notification from the book club group chat. Plans being made for next month's meeting. A discussion about which book to read. Normal, easy friendships with people who valued me without demanding I diminish myself. I added my vote to the discussion and set the phone on its charger. Tomorrow was Monday. I had work I enjoyed, a lunch date with a colleague who'd become a friend, an evening that belonged to me to fill however I chose. It was an ordinary life, quiet, unglamorous, nothing to post about or celebrate publicly, but it was mine. Fully, completely, honestly mine. And as I turned off the light and settled into bed, I felt something I'd spent decades not feeling. Contentment. Not the kind that comes from having everything you want, but the kind that comes from wanting what you have, from building a life that fits, from choosing, every day, to honor yourself rather than erase yourself. The journey wasn't over. There would be more difficult conversations, more moments of choice, more times when I'd have to decide between comfort and integrity. But I knew now that I could make those choices, that I had the strength to stand in my truth even when it was lonely. That I deserved a life built on honesty rather than obligation. 3 years ago, I'd been told I wasn't one of the good ones, and I'd spent those 3 years learning that the opinion that mattered most was my own. I closed my eyes and let sleep come, easy and unburdened. Tomorrow would arrive with its own challenges and choices, but tonight, in this moment, I was exactly where I needed to be. Whole, unborrowed, free. The woman who'd canceled that card on Mother's Day morning had been afraid, uncertain, trembling with the weight of what she was about to do. But she'd done it anyway, and in doing so, she'd given me the greatest gift imaginable. She'd given me myself back. I fell asleep thinking about her, that woman I'd been, wanting to reach back through time and tell her it would be okay, that the path ahead would be hard but worth it, that she was braver than she knew, but she didn't need me to tell her. She'd known. In that moment, with her finger hovering over that confirmation button, she'd known, and she'd chosen courage anyway. I woke the next morning to sunlight and silence. Made coffee, sat on my porch, watched the world wake up around me. My phone stayed inside, charging. There was no urgency, no crisis, no demands waiting to reshape my day before it began. This was my life now. Not perfect, not without complications or challenges or occasional loneliness, but mine. Fully, completely, unapologetically mine. And that, I'd learned, was everything.